What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. We have a very exciting and interesting episode to talk about today. We're talking about Deep Space Nine Season 1, Episode 11, The Vortex. I have little dogs with me here today, so there might be some dogography. Can't wait. Mike, how's it going?
It's going great, man. Can't complain. It's a beautiful day. I went to Hershey Park yesterday with my nieces, so that was fun. Hershey Park is cool.
Fun.
I guess everyone else knew it was a national holiday, so it was crowded. But nonetheless, I'm feeling rejuvenated because of those 18,000 steps. Happy to be here today with you, Keith. Let's talk some Star Trek.
Yes, indeed. Happy late Juneteenth to everybody. All right, so we have really interesting episode. We're laying a lot of groundwork. I said this last week, but this week it is also true that we're learning a lot of stuff that's going to be very important moving forward. But before we do that, Mike, we have some other things and other people who are very important to us.
That's true.
Who are taking advantage of the opportunity to become producers on this money-losing venture we call Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/K&M. Mike, tell us who our patrons are.
We have the illustrious grouping of Brian Kaufman, Casey Clark, Cloud Lover 69, Jorge Navoa, Alan Zimmerman, CRM Productions, check them out, of course, and Charles Babbage, and let's not forget Anne, who's decided, you know what, just Anne is fine.
I think that just shows good judgment.
Absolutely.
Well, all of those fine folks can find really fun stuff on our Patreon page, including bonus episodes, Ask Me Anythings. You can watch Mike watch the episode of Deep Space Nine before you even watch this, so you can get a little teaser on what Mike is thinking as it's happening. So lots of fun stuff there. Go check it out. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. So what do you say we, beam back in and talk to each other? There we go. And I had like the little narc, like, why I'm not on camera? Why am I even doing this if I'm not on camera?
Well, you can tell which one of us just came from therapy.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, if I feel extra grounded, it's usually we record this on Tuesdays after therapy. So I'm feeling good, feeling grounded, feeling excited to talk about this episode. And in fact, of those watch-alongs with Mike, I don't usually watch the Mike watch-along because I don't want to get a preview of how Mike feels about an episode or any thoughts that he might have. But just for fun, I actually watched Mike watched this when I noted the episode, and so it was really interesting to watch Mike notice or not notice important things in the episode as it happened live. It was entertaining.
Yeah,
it's Mike sitting on the floor. It's a thing I've seen in real life too often. But
this was an interesting week for me because I was getting cozy, I was getting comfortable, and usually that's kind of my position to watch a baseball game or just some stuff when I'm just in my office hanging out. And I was like, you know what? Usually I'll do my recording of this show on Monday after we do Oops so that I can be fresh in the noggin. But I was looking for something to watch, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get comfortable and watch Deep Space Nine. Now, I learned something very important this week that will carry me forth. So I watched the whole episode. I jotted down some notes. I took all the screenshots. And at the end, I was thinking, we learned so much. And I was formulating my thoughts, but I realized I'd forgotten a couple screenshots at the top, as I tend to do, because I get watching and I forget to snap the screenshots. Anyway, I go back and watch the first probably 10 minutes of the episode again, and I recognize that, and I don't know if this has been happening, and I'll see if it happens forth. Within that teaser segment that you always pitch when you're going through the screenshots, they literally dropped breadcrumbs for every plot point. They poured in every plot point. And I was like, you could actually watch the first 3 minutes of this episode and you will know everything that you know 45 minutes from now.
Well, in some ways, yeah. I mean, certainly in this episode, Quark we're going to talk about it later, but like Quark does a bunch of speculation
Heavy lifting.
that then gets.
It's almost like he's a soothsayer.
He is, although based on Odo's behavior, it's not a wild extrapolation, and of course by the end of this, we don't necessarily even know if this guy's information is accurate either.
True.
But we might know later. But before we get into all of that, let's talk a little bit more about the world of the show. So let's just set the scene. Let's take ourselves back into the time machine, back to 1993. I was 13, living life in 7th grade. 7th grade sucked. But you know what didn't suck? Deep Space Nine.
Mm-hmm.
This aired on Sunday, April 18th, 1993. The top song continued to be, and I know I'm here for it, you're here for it, Mike's rendition of Informer by Snow. Let's hear.
Informer, you should know I did not write this song at all. I like your boom boom now with consent.
Well, that ties in really well with the top movie this week, which is, of course, Indecent Proposal. So yeah, that definitely it all ties into this
Indecent
wonderful
Proposal,
melange.
which has become a verb in my marriage, because every once in a while, someone out general recount a story. I'm like, you got indecent proposal.
Oh yes, well, she certainly gets indecent proposal more often than we do, but it's not zero. So so there you go.
There's so much in that.
Speaking of interesting times, the New York Times headline is 2 of 4 officers found guilty in Los Angeles. So this is in the aftermath of the Rodney King trials. This was not the first Rodney King trial. This was the second one for violating Rodney King's civil rights after the acquittal, which started the riots in 1991, which is there's a fascinating podcast. I think Slate put out a great podcast all about that. Fascinating, infuriating, enraging, but really interesting stuff. But there is a Star Trek tie-in to the Rodney King riots, because my Uncle Jim, who did the sound effects, and this was back before Deep Space Nine, this was on Next Generation, he tells a story of driving back from work during the riots that very day, because he was leaving the Paramount lot. He was working on an episode and had to drive back through it. It's harrowing when you really think about it. But anyway, but today at least 2 of the 4 were found guilty for violating the civil rights after they were acquitted of the beating. So lots of sort of difficult, especially here we are the day after Juneteenth, but certainly interesting context for when this episode aired.
Just a pitch, and Keith and I've discussed this. We wear our politics and our thoughts and stuff on our sleeves, but in no way are we trying to focus on any of that, because this is about watching Star Trek together. But to your point, Keith, could you mention that podcast again? That's a Slate podcast.
It's a Slate podcast about the Rodney King. The riots, the trial, the situation. Let me see if I can find it.
While you're doing that, I only mention it because what I have found, and I'm sure this goes for a lot of us, and it ties into us sort of rewatching this television show so many years in the future, is that the hard memories you make at 13, especially with current events, are very much framed with your worldview at 13. So
yeah.
When you go back, even the Clinton scandal and the machinations of all of that. I was very young, so you think you remember certain things, but when you go back and watch more current sort of, especially now, long view analysis of certain of those current events, it's striking how, well, not striking, actually, it makes perfect sense, but it's the juxtaposition of your memory of something at that age versus how it actually went down is pretty stark.
Well, and it's a Slow Burn did a season about that. It also informs Star Trek, right? Because sci-fi is about what's happening in current events told through a sci-fi lens.
Right.
Because you can talk about it a little differently. And we're going to, in a couple of seasons, we're going to spend some time in Los Angeles in the aftermath of this sort of a thing. So
Alrighty.
there's a lot that's going to happen there. So I do find it interesting to talk about what's happening in the world at that time because it informs everything else. So all right, well, enough of that. Let's get back into the world of the episode of Deep Space Nine, Season 1, Episode 11, Vortex, which was directed by Weinrich Colby, a veteran Star Trek director who last directed Past Prologue. This episode was written by Sam Wolf, who also wrote The Vengeance Factor on The Next Generation, and I'm going to bring him up again in our trivia section, but we're not going to get to our trivia section without a little bumper that goes like this. Now, Keith, waste your time with trivial trivia. Okay. So, this episode is the first use of the word changeling, which we will hear a lot more moving forward. So those of you who know what's going to come over the next 7 seasons, which Mike does not, certainly picked up when we heard that.
Yeah, I started taking shots every time they said it, and I was wasted.
Well, that's no different. So another thing that I find interesting about this, the virtual effects for the camera Vortex were actually reused from the Wrath of Khan. Recolored and flipped. But that's why it looks so good.
Yeah, Keith will know how impressed I was by the effects.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least of the Vortex,
the digital
was Wrath of Khan. Yeah. So while I give this next piece of trivial trivia, I'm hearing myself, I think, bouncing back through something on your end.
Probably my earphones, but
Probably your cans.
Yeah, that's because I'm using a different microphone today, Keith, that I won't use again. But you're gonna have to just deal with it, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. You know, that most of the show is just listening to us, battle with tech. So here's the piece of trivia about the writer of this episode, Sam Rolfe. So Peter Allen Field came up with the idea for this episode, and it was based on the 1953 movie The Naked Spur, Oscar-nominated film. And so what did he do? He hired the writer of that movie to write this episode. So Sam Rolfe was actually nominated for an Oscar for The Naked Spur. And they're like, you know what? Just come on, write this episode. We're going to base it on your movie anyway. So I thought that was interesting. And our last piece of trivial trivia is Randy Oglesby plays both of the Miradorn twins. So when we are seeing the twins, it's actually a special effect of the same actor being mirrored. So, yeah, you didn't pick that up in 1993. There is one particular shot I'm going to point out where you can tell that that's happening. But other than that, I thought they did it pretty seamlessly. So our guest stars this week include Cliff DeYoung as Crowden. Cliff DeYoung did 3 episodes of The Practice in our other show, the Out of Practice podcast. And, of course, Randy Oglesby as the Miradorn twins. But you think Randy Oglesby, I feel like I know that guy from Star Trek. Well, you do, because he plays Degra on Enterprise on 11 episodes. He plays Kier in Voyager's Counterpoint. He plays a scholar in Loud as a Whistle in Next Generation, and will return for another episode of Deep Space Nine. Lots of Trek. So, Mike, I think it's time to hop into the theater and talk about this episode. What do you say?
I can't wait, Keith. Let's do it.
And I will say, from my experience of watching Mike watch this episode, the singing doesn't stop. So it keeps going, which I was so there for. That I might at least watch that part of it every week. So,
oh man.
All right, so let's talk about this teaser here for Vortex. It begins with Odo chatting with Quark about the arrival of a ship of Miradorn raiders. Odo is naturally suspicious that they and Quark will be up to no good. And so here is multiple pictures of Odo being suspicious, Quark being suspicious, but Odo is also suspicious of a new guy from the Gamma Quadrant named Croden. And you can clearly tell that dude is shifty.
Mm-hmm.
The Miradorn raiders enter and nod at Quark. And Odo reacts, of course.
So you're telling me this is the same dude?
Same dude. So this is an effects shot of the two of them composited together. But I'm glad that you got this shot because it's perfect. Basically, they come across, they nod at Quark, and then they continue, and they walk past, and the camera follows them. If you go back and watch this shot, you'll notice that once the guy in the foreground passes in front of the camera, his brother disappears. So it's an effects shot that they didn't complete entirely. There's a few frames where you can tell that the other one disappeared when he walked in front of them. It's very subtle. I only noticed it the second time I watched it, but it is interesting to see. Like he just gets, he goes into the vapors like we do sometimes. So Quark then accuses Odo of being endlessly over-suspicious and paranoid. And this is where he assumes that Odo's entire species must be the same way. So you mentioned you were like, oh, we got a lot of exposition here.
Yeah, I did.
Insightful.
I already said it. It's basically everything. I was like, why would they bring up his species already? Why would he bring up these two dudes? But luckily I missed it anyway, so I'm glad the episode exists.
I mean, and looking at the costume design and the creature design for the Miradorn Raiders, it's funny because like part of it looks sort of cool and intimidating. You've got that gray sort of hollow-faced Cardassian look there, and then like the black and gray. It's a good color scheme, but then it sort of looks like what I would look like if I were in that costume. Like it was.
Sometimes I wonder, because it's not always the case, but a lot of times on these week-to-week episodes, at least, I think they're like, you know what? We did such a cool facial design for this new species or whatnot. Don't get too complicated with the costuming because we want the focus to be up top. Plus, because of the aspect ratio, we're going to be shooting a lot of this in close-up anyway, so like we don't got to worry about the suit so much.
Right. Yeah. No, totally. I think it's as a bellied American, I think I would have appreciated those colors to be flipped a little bit.
Yeah,
but
horizontal stripes, not great.
Horizontal. And actually, if I move the screenshot up, like it kind of looks like they're wearing diapers. So
at least it's partial sweatpant. At least
it's not great facial prosthetics. Great look for the guy. That costume. I think I would have had notes for the costumer had it been me. So we continue. Quark lays that pretty heavily. So then we watch Rom assemble 4 glasses and a bottle of something. Then the camera shifts back, and there are 5 glasses. Did you pick up on that?
I did not.
Mike?
No.
Yeah. So there's a shot we see a close up on Rom putting 4 glasses on the tray. He goes and grabs the bottle, and camera follows him. Then comes back, puts the bottle. It's all one shot. And then, of course, there are 5 glasses on the table.
Which, I guess, is the setup for a punchline that Quark has in a little bit. Because, right, don't we go to black with him being like, 5 glasses for only 4 people? That's his big concern of the...
Well, but you realize what the 5th glass is.
Maybe I don't.
It's Odo.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what happened there is Odo shifted into one of the glasses, and that's why he shows up in the meeting later.
Good for you.
But yeah, I mean, I have questions about the physics of it all. I mean, the changeling thing has always been like, How's your mass change? How do
Well, right,
whatever?
because it defies the conservation of of energy and mass, right? Like you can't lose to like shrink like that. Would have to dissipate some of your energies. It would have to go some. I don't know.
Yeah, or else the glass would have to be super dense, and it would be like a 200-pound
Right,
glass.
but
I don't really know what the
Keith,
deal is.
space,
Also,
space, Keith.
space. Yeah. What also there's the element of, okay, so Rom had his back turned, and we always see Odo change. It takes like 3 or 4 seconds whenever we see him change on camera, but off camera he can do it instantaneously. But also, he's in a crowded bar.
Mhm.
If I turned from my full body to goo and then into a glass, I feel like somebody would notice that in a crowded room.
Well,
But
anything involving you and goo, Keith, nobody wants to pay attention to.
that is for damn sure. Anyway, so it's nonetheless, it's cool, it's clever. I like the sort of little Easter egg there if you paid attention and noticed that the 5th glass was there or not. Mike swapping out headphones because that's the type of professional that he is. So the other thing you can notice in the back of the shot as we're coming back is right as we're coming back, you'll notice 2 extras sort of awkwardly stepping over the bulkheads on the bottom of the floor. Because I remember how we talked about this before, that the doorways don't go all the way to the ground, so you have to step about a foot over the bulkheads there, and you see the extras sort of awkwardly stepping over it in the background there. So if you're interested in watching extras navigate an impractical set,
Keith, did you enjoy on the
moment.
watch along that I could not come up with the word Fabergé egg?
It was pretty funny, yeah. But it took me a second too. But yes, it was Fabergé egg was what you were looking for at the beginning of Act 1, where the Miradorn Raiders are negotiating with Quark over a spangled Easter egg, or Fabergé egg, depends on how you care to describe it. And Rom shows up with the glasses. And but Quark says the buyers backed out because this Fabergé egg is clearly stolen. The Raiders are pissed at Quark. Then, Croton shows up with a phaser. And he's acting very oddly, and he tries to steal the egg. There is a fight, the glass breaks, and of course, it's Odo. And one of the twins is killed as he shoots the phaser here.
Great shot.
And Odo, of course, breaks it up. So you didn't track that it was Odo was one of the glasses that broke.
No, but I mean, like, he's shown a propensity to get in and being in the room where it happened. So I wasn't totally shocked. Also, but what I did pick up is that he's strong as hell. He picked that guy right up off the ground.
Yeah, Odo's super strong. And we're gonna there is one little question in this episode about the physiology of Odo and whether something that happens in here is possible, because it doesn't seem like it's possible later in the series, but we won't get to it yet. But actually in this shot here, you can see that silver part we were sort of saying didn't look great in that shot looks much better close up. You see there's a lot more detail and movement in the silver part there. And I think that this is where the prosthetics and makeup were designed to look good in standard definition on your smaller TVs, that kind of stuff. Whereas I feel like a lot of these costumes lost out by not being in higher definition, because even if you weren't as close up, in high def, you'd be able to see that detailing and it wouldn't look so diapery, I think. So anyway, there you go. You get a good shot of that makeup. There's Quark. And yeah, he's super dead.
He's merely most sincerely dead.
And they certainly were smart there, because now they don't have to do any special effects shots of the two of them together. Yeah. So there's Bashir. He's dead. They go to Cisco's office, and the Miradorn twin, the surviving one, is very upset about his brother being killed. Apparently, Miradorn twins are symbiotic as well, which is an interesting little wrinkle here to it's much more than you killed my brother. He sort of describes it as like half of himself, which is usually metaphorical, but in this case, I guess it's practical, it's real.
Except that outside of that interesting wrinkle, it doesn't, I guess, explain. It doesn't really mean anything else. I mean, like, we've met Trill, so we could get into we don't get into the weeds about it, and it doesn't like up the stakes about the legal ramifications. It's just sort of this guy's a little extra pissed.
He's like, well, I mean, it has to explain why he goes to such lengths to try to get revenge. But because we set up that they were sort of bad guys anyway, that the Miradorns are like tough, aggressive, whatever's like Nausicaans or something. Like we get it. But it's a wrinkle. I'll take it. But you want who won't take it? Odo. Odo has zero sympathy. Like, your brother is dead. I don't give a shit. You were trying to sell stolen property.
Yeah, Odo's got a little Kira in him this episode. He's pissed at everybody.
He's not having it. He is not having it. Cisco tells him to the Miradorn to return to his ship but not leave the station. And he reinforces that his only purpose in life is now to get revenge on Croden. Yeah, see, it's tough to... That costume's tough. Anyway,
that costume really upset. Do you just import yourself into every costume and then make your decisions based on what you think you might look like in it?
More specifically, what costumes would I look fat in?
All right.
That's really...
Folks, you've seen on our other shows us in our favorite Star Trek uniforms. We need another custom Star Trek person out there to design Keith in a Mirador uniform with the spangles, with the belly. We need the whole thing.
So the Miradorn minus the girdle. Great.
Oh no!
You know, I'm sure Chris would have done it, but he would have done it realistically, but he didn't have enough resin to fill it out. Anyway, insecurities are right here on the surface. I came out of therapy, okay? You know, here I am.
This is me.
Anyway, enough of that. So Quark talks his way out of jail because he wasn't going to sell the stolen egg, which, to be fair, is true. He was saying, hey, I think this is stolen. I'm not going to take this. But Odo, perpetually suspicious Odo, doesn't buy it and points out that, hey, how did that guy get a Ferengi phaser? So,
Odo.
Odo. But I think Odo might have a point.
Well, you know what his answer was, Keith?
What was that?
I dodo.
I just beamed out of the episode if you're listening to the audio version of this.
Yeah, that's what Ben had the same reaction to my joke.
Yes, that he is making the exact correct. Oh my god, where were we? Okay, so Rom helpfully makes it clear that Quark totally set up the robbery. Odo and Cisco.
Yeah, thank God Rom is Rom now, because I didn't know he was even going to be a character on the show, but he's awesome. He's funny.
Ron's fun.
Yeah.
Rom is fun.
Ron.
And is always creating chaos. Yeah, we're gonna go on some fun adventures with Rom.
All right.
I like it.
So now let's go back. Let's go hang out with this guy who is perpetually, I guess, used to being held captive. He really is cocksure that he can chitty chat his way out of anything.
Yeah, well, you know, chitty chat's what we do. So Odo and Cisco meet Croden in the brig. Croden recognizes Odo's species and calls him a changeling. This is big news. He claims to have seen changelings before. I think we should point out that Croden is from the Gamma Quadrant, not the Alpha Quadrant. So that's kind of important. So back at Quark's, Odo arrives to casually continue interrogating Quark.
He's giving me vibes of Dr. Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park 1, just like handsome,
Oh,
hanging
yeah.
out, just chilling.
He's very chill.
Yeah.
It's so rare you get to like really chill and
Changeling
relax.
life finds a way, baby. Changeling life finds a way.
Yeah, it's too bad he just didn't have a super deep V while he was doing it.
He's got more of a U, but
Yeah, well, and he's wearing the unitard jammies that were everybody wears in Star Trek. That just when in doubt, just go with footy pajamas.
which you have to
in,
imagine
blocked
everybody's
colors.
wearing those, and I think to myself, there must be, and since we don't talk about the bathrooms very often, just taking a pee seems very complicated.
Yeah, because if
You gotta
like, go to
disrobe,
yeah, I mean, like if you gotta use the urinal, you have to be completely buck ass naked.
and you need a buddy. You're like, could you get my zip?
Yes, exactly. So Odo continues interrogating Quark. Odo's theory is that Quark was going to help Croden get back through the wormhole if he robbed the Miradorns for him. But we never did hear how Croden got to the station, did we?
No. Yeah,
I don't remember that. So they are interrupted, and they find out that security calls, and we see that the Miradorn is blocking Odo's office to protest. Odo runs him off and goes back to chat with Croden some more, which I think is what's happening in these screenshots. So Croden tries to chat up Odo by pointing out their similarities. Being from the Gamma Quadrant and being alone, although we do not know yet if Odo is from the Gamma Quadrant or not. But Croden says that the changelings are distrustful of other species.
Seems to track.
Right? That the changelings were driven off of his homeworld, and he says he knows where there are some left. Naturally, he says he has to show Odo himself. Croden then shows Odo his necklace, and it has a little goo thing that changes like Odo does. Whoa. So that's important. So Cisco in Act 2, Cisco and Dax arrive in orbit of Croden's home planet. They try to make contact to figure out what to do with Croden. And Avery Brooks pronounces homicide homicide for some reason.
Yeah, that was weird.
They make these things happen. They make contact, and the guy from Croden's planet is pissed and says Croden is an enemy of the people. And apparently, he's a super criminal. And he is not friendly. So they asked to be
you're well ahead.
extradited.
Here are some screenshots. Let's catch up here.
Yeah. Screenshots are behind. Yeah, now he was hungry.
He was
so
hungry.
He's getting his food.
Do you think on the replicator they're like prison food?
like give you shitty food?
Yeah, because it looked like he was eating slop.
It did look like he was eating slop, but I mean, I guess like we've talked about this before with the replicators. Like if you're just converting whatever from your matter storage, it really just comes down to the recipe. And like, why wouldn't they all? I mean, I'll have decent recipe. We're in a world past like commerce or whatever. Like, you shouldn't have slop.
What I liked about the writing here, since we backed up a little bit, what I've liked about the writing of this scene was that even though he's got this changeling key, there's still sufficient evidence for Odo to be suspicious because it all seems very convenient. Yes. You happen to know all of this. You happen to have been to the changeling planet. You happen to have exchanged items with them. And all of this can be mine for the nominal fee of letting you out of prison. So because generally you'd be like, oh my God, you clearly want to know about this. He's got some evidence, jump at the chance. But it was all presented so conveniently that also they were able to make a distinction between convenient for TV or convenient in the arc. And it definitely was the latter, it felt like to me.
Yeah, no, and I the other thing about this, and I think when we talk about wormholes in the plot, I think Croden's backstory, like once the story starts, it all makes sense and it's all great, it's all tracks. But we don't really know how he got on the station. We assume that he wants to get back to the Gamma Quadrant, right? But we learn later that he's on the run, so why would he want to? But regardless of where he wanted to get to, there had to be ways to get somewhere without doing a holdup for Quark.
Yeah, except, hold on. Something, a neuron fired.
Ooh.
What is the exposition in the beginning regarding the Vulcans? Because I know how there's a tie-up at the end with the Vulcans, but in the beginning, somebody says something about the Vulcans were transporting something, and it feels like maybe they stowed away on that ship.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't think I caught that. Well, folks, people who apparently need to watch more closely than I do, fill in that hole in the wormhole for me on the comments below.
Yes, please.
Because that would make sense, right? If he stowed away on a Vulcan ship to get through the wormhole, that would make sense. It would certainly wouldn't make sense that he'd want to go back through the wormhole, but that's a supposition that Odo does, so we don't actually even know that. So yeah, all right, that would make sense. So if your neuron was telling the truth, that makes a lot of sense, and I will retract my wormhole. But if not, then I won't. So yeah, so I mean the effect here of the transition wasn't great, but the little goo thing in the necklace, it's a very cool idea. For sure. Mike's looking it up. So although don't look up anything in the future.
No, just this episode.
Okay. So in Act 2, like I said, Cisco and Dax go to Croden's home planet. They try to figure out what the deal is. We find out that Croden's a super criminal, and they're sort of like, give me this guy. Cisco says, okay, yup, and I will see you in 52 hours back with Croden. And there's a great, Avery Brooks is probably thrilled about that screenshot. What'd you find, Mike?
Nothing. There's no mention of it in the summary I was reading, but I might go back myself because I'm pretty sure I heard something. The Vulcans don't just come up at the end. There's something's mentioned in the beginning.
Okay. All right. I that would make perfect sense. I just missed it. Okay. So we have our little showdown with the guy there. Nice establishing shot of the station. And back in the infirmary, Bashir confirms that the goo necklace is indeed alive and similar to Odo biologically, which is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Odo then, of course,
interesting,
goes
but
back...
then not particularly satisfactory. Well, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's. He says it's a distant cousin. It could be a whatever. Well, I mean, we're not going to get an answer to it in one episode, Mike.
No, but it's like, how does it know that it only unlocks that one thing? How do you establish that? Like, how did he set the lock? The whole thing is a little weird.
Well, I mean, just how do you make any key, right? Just this is a key that is done this way.
Right, but it seemed like he used that key for the lockbox. I guess he purchased the lock. It seemed like he got the key separate to the box, but now it seems like they're a package deal.
Right. Well, and the question is this a master key? Or is this some great thieving tool where you would stick this into any lock and it would open any thing, which would make it crazy valuable and super cool.
But wouldn't it make it, and this is a conversation for another time, but wouldn't that make it couldn't then probably be related to the Changeling, at least not what we know of them via Odo, because that seems the antithesis of his sort of very structured morals when it comes to security.
Well, I don't think they were saying it's conscious. I don't think they're saying this thing has thoughts and feelings. It's just life I mean, because honestly, you take a banana here and we're somewhat related because it evolved on our planet, right? Because don't they say we share 80% of our genetic code with the banana or a tree or whatever? I could be wrong.
I hope that someone out there has the time and wherewithal to dissect the sentence Keith just said.
No, it's totally true.
What you said
I am not lying.
What you said was Doesn't the saying go, we share 80% of our DNA with a banana or a tree or something?
That's why you come here for that. It's insightful. Well, I think it's true. Anyway, I'm gonna look it up. We do, I believe, share.
I'm sure.
How much of our genetic code? Yes, how much of our genes are the same as a banana? Ha! Right here, it actually shows up. It's 50%, but we share 50% of our genes with plants. Bananas have 44.1% of the genetic makeup common in humans.
All right.
So, so my numbers were off, but the concept, there is a saying about banana specifically. Ha! Redemption.
Well, you know what they say about that. You should forget it. I'm not gonna continue that.
I was looking for my beam out button again. I knew whatever that was.
Well, what you could have done is, instead of "I told you so," you could have said "banana boo." Forget it. Let's go. Let's move.
Okay, so I'm gonna do the rest of the show from an empty box.
Keith,
we
want you to live. We want you to live.
Okay, fine. All right, so after finding out that Odo was related to a banana, he goes back to meet up with Croden again. He says Croden says he found the necklace with a bunch of changelings on an asteroid belt in a vortex that he discovered by accident.
And only he knows how to get through it.
And only he knows how to get there. And conveniently, Cisco tells Odo to escort Croden back to his people, ostensibly for execution. So that's convenient. They need to be careful, however, to get past the Miradorn, who is still waiting on the station for an opportunity to take out Croden. And they do an interesting gag where Odo hides the runabout behind a departing freighter to mask their departure.
Heidi hides. Heidi
hides. And a cool effect. Yeah. I don't know if you got a screenshot of it, but I thought it looked pretty cool.
There you go.
There it is. I thought, again, these are, at this point, still models that they're compositing together, and I thought looked really good. So in Act 3... they go through the wormhole. In the runabout, Croden reminds Odo that he doesn't fit in. Mind games. Croden says that on his homeworld, Croden gives his backstory. How did he end up a political enemy? That the authorities murdered his wives and claimed him to be a political enemy. So they're in some sort of authoritarian world. And he did kill the guys who killed his wives. And it was a good monologue. Seemed credible. We had another what we would call on our other show the Bloody Gurgles monologue, where he talked about slitting their throats with a knife that he kills foul. So apparently on this planet they have work capabilities, but they're still killing chickens with a knife.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where we are. But I thought it was a good monologue. It seemed credible. I bought it.
Yeah, and more importantly, Renee buys it, or Odo buys it, and he does a lot of great subtle acting, because though you can see he's moved emotionally, he's able to hold up his Odo facade, which I thought was made for a more credible and powerful emotional beat.
Yeah. So back in the station, the Miradorn. Oh yeah, so there's sort of Renee's reaction to that. Very subtle and yet very Renee's ability to act through the prosthetics is remarkable. Because he has to do it almost entirely with his eyes. And because of Odo's sort of characterization, he doesn't move his face very often.
Right.
And it really speaks to the caliber of actor that you have in order to have all of that emotion through all of that. So back on the station, the Miradorn is pissed and blames Quark.
Oh, that's powerful.
Quark immediately throws Odo under the bus and says he'll help the Miradorn find Croden. And in this, Rom has a funny gag, pushing his face up against a wall during the conflict. So after he leaves, so they do the security chips to find out where Odo is, what's going on. But after that, Rom realizes, we're screwed because Quark is now concerned he might get Odo
Go back
killed.
one. This is my favorite TV trope, which is or one more forward. 2 forward now.
Oh, four.
Okay, we're going to need you to hold that because clearly he knows what this is. But we're going to need you to hold it up in front of your face, perfectly frame it for the camera, and then use it. That's my favorite. One of my favorites.
Yes. Is this cat food? Let me see. Fancy feast.
Precisely.
But of course, Rom realizes they're screwed. Odo, and Quark is concerned he might get Odo killed because he won't give up Croden to the Miradorn. So basically, he's like, Odo's out there. He's transporting him. They're in a runabout. The Miradorn ship is faster. And so Quark's whole story in this episode is a little dicey, right? Because he sets up a robbery, which gets somebody literally killed and gets away with it. And now he's setting up Odo to be killed.
Well, because he knows Odo. He says Odo won't give up the prisoner.
Right. He's not going to give the prisoner. And so what is he going to do here? So I think in the last 4 episode, Quark's ethics have taken a dive.
Yes.
And it's not.
Well, we'll say this: the rules have been muddy. They were presented one way and then seemed to change slightly. But if we boil it all the way down, in this circumstance, I guess the out is to say that when it comes to a life and death scenario, Quark will always bargain for his own. So in this case, he sacrifices Odo to protect he and Rom. So.
Yes. Well, and he's always going to look out for number one, but rarely does he quite so nakedly put his best friend in peril as he does here. Anyway, continuing on in Ops, they realize the Miradorn ship is leaving, and they try to slow him down, but no dice. The ship leaves and goes through the wormhole. And, I know they had to have a scene of them slowing them down, but it felt a little bit like filler because they weren't actually doing anything. But it just set up this beautiful shot.
Yeah.
And the effects of the
runabout in the wormhole and in the asteroid field was really cool. The
wormhole, and so this is the effect from Wrath of Khan that they've reused here. So obviously not the runabout, but the Vortex effect. That's the scenes where Khan and the Enterprise are sneaking around through it, trying to the sort of submarine sequence takes place in this. Just flipped. So here we are next. 4, Croden tries to convince Odo to try and find his people in the Vortex rather than take him back to his homeworld. And he tells Odo more about his people. But before they can get too far into it, there's Renee's conflicted face. And he's still talking. The Miradorn ship shows up and starts firing.
We do a lot of shaky shaking in our seat.
A lot of shaky shaking in our seat, which of course, Mike, you realize how they did that. Yeah, you shake the camera and then you shake this, and they had a scale of 1 to 10 for the actors.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, they're like, shake it at 1, shake it at 10. Wah! And it was they were supposed to be able to calibrate. All right, give me a 6.
Let's see. How about what's this?
Well, and that's how you composited the two of them together. So you shake the camera, then you shake the actors, and that way you can't tell nothing's actually shaking.
All right.
The set is not on a gimbal. So anyway, usually it looks pretty good, all things considered, for as low tech as it is, in the same way they did it back on the original series. Anyway, I thought the battle here looked pretty good.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, this is 1993.
And I like that they gave the Miradorn teeth. It's not they put up a good fight.
Yeah, no, and they were there for the kill. They were not there to screw around. So
they're gonna get theirs.
This battle,
they're gonna get theirs.
They're gonna get theirs. So this is also, I think this sequence is interesting where Odo has to hand over control of the ship to Croden to fly, because we realize some of Odo's limitations. He's not in Starfleet. He's not a pilot. He doesn't know how to do some of these things. So he's not like one of those, like, everybody's secretly an amazing pilot. Everybody secretly has all of these abilities. Odo has limitations.
Well,
And I think that's an interesting thing about the character.
It also adds a little nuance. Well, because Croden said that he knew this asteroid field very well. So in this case, he proves it. It allows Odo to have to trust him. Basically, his hand was forced, but regardless, he then sees, oh, okay, so maybe if he's telling truth about this, maybe there's truth to other things, which makes his discovery in a couple beats even smarter when it clicks over. Because I think this gives him I really want to believe him now.
Yeah. Well, he's one of those characters who starts out, he's very cavalier because, like, I don't think you're gonna believe anything I'm gonna say, and then when you have that twist where he starts telling the truth, we have this credibility arc on the character. Anyway, so he releases Croden to fly the ship. Naturally, their only choice is to go through the vortex after all. And we find out there are volatile gases, of course, in the vortex. So they have to go slowly. And they decide to hide by landing on the asteroid where he says he found the Changeling colony, which is a great place to end Act 4. And here are some of the inside of the battle. Here's some of the battle here. And then here they are on the asteroid. The landed ship model looks great.
Yeah, it looks great. It also looks like they landed the model in that same place where in AlamarEmmys we ended that episode.
Well, although this is the miniature of that, but it conveniently matches the cave set that they use. They have that one basically static. On stage, whatever, and we see it on every Star Trek ever. They're gonna go through that cave set over and over and over and over again. But the miniature here looks great. So they get there. Croden immediately runs off, and Odo chases him through said cave set. And we find that there is no changeling colony, and that it was all a lie, and the changelings were just stories told on his homeworld. He thought that the changelings were a myth until he met Odo, which I love.
Yeah, that's great.
That twist. I love that backstory because we're continuing to spin the mystery. We're dropping some information, but we don't know if it's true. We know it's a myth, but we know that they've heard of similar things. So, it speaks to the patience that this show has on slowly unraveling the story. And it's going to be, spoiler alert, it's going to be a big part of the series moving forward. So turns out, the necklace turns out to be a key, like we said. And it opens a stasis chamber for Croden's daughter, who was the only member he could save. They open the chamber, and the daughter wakes up. Croden agrees to go home if Odo takes the daughter to safety. So this whole thing wasn't even to save himself. His plan was to get Odo to rescue his daughter, who was in the stasis chamber hidden on the asteroid.
I thought it was a good beat that they didn't make us wait until the daughter beat for Odo to be like, this is all BS. Like, he sniffs it out instantly. Or at least thinks he sniffs it out. So I thought that was great that he reverts. I thought it was good for the story arc that he reverts a little bit in his trustingness, so that he can once again have to find out that he was wrong, basically.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting that there are a lot of layers in this story, and of course he's lying constantly to try to get here, and from Croden's standpoint, it's like what do you have to do to get to, which is actually explains why he'd want to go back through the wormhole to get his daughter.
Right. Yeah.
So, what does he need to do, especially where he starts out from? He starts as a murderer in prison, how do I get from there to a specific asteroid in this vortex to save my daughter? And he finds a way to do it, and I think credibly so.
And I think the next couple of beats that we're about to talk about really show, because to be fair, what's the actor's name who plays this character, Groden?
It is. Come on, where is he? Oh, Cliff DeYoung.
Yes, I find that Cliff gives a very solid performance throughout. But what I find, but he's obviously, you're always sort of like Odo. You're a little off kilter about what's true, what's being embellished upon, what is a tactic, which is great performance. But where I really think he reels it in and gives his most solid performances in this next beat here, where at no point do you actually feel like he's spinning a yarn in order to get them set free. It looks like he completely is convincing that he just wants his daughter safe. So when Odo makes his ultimate decision, the surprise and appreciation he feels also feels earned, and that's tough to do.
Right. That the manipulation was to save the daughter, not himself.
Yep.
And I think that's clear by the end of it.
Yeah.
Which I think is
I think
cool,
in lesser
and I like
hands, it might not have been as clear.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. So they're here, they meet the daughter, the Miradorn starts firing on the asteroid. And Odo is knocked out by falling rocks. And this is the part where I'm curious how Odo's knocked out. Because you get knocked out by hitting your head, having a concussion, messing with your brain. Well, Odo doesn't have a brain. I mean, in a literal sense. And like, who's to say his brain is here and not in his foot and not on his whatever. So I feel like that would be him being knocked unconscious by a rock feels a little, I'm not convenient. I'll put it that way.
Well, unless whatever form he takes, once he establishes that form, all the bips and bops are in the correct place they would be for that form. Maybe it's 1-to-1.
Well, that certainly would make sense, and matches up with. So when he was the glass and the glass shattered, he took on the properties of the thing he was. Yeah. So now if I was him and I'm just trying to look human, maybe I put my brain somewhere else where it's less vulnerable. But nonetheless, I think you might have fixed it. I think you fixed it. Good job.
Because he didn't see the rock coming, right? Because obviously,
no,
he would goo up before it hit him if that was the other.
Right. So, cool. So, anyway, Odo gets knocked out. Croden decides to save Odo and returns him to the runabout. And they keep being chased. Now, of course, this is where we get a sense of Croden's ethics, too. Because from his standpoint, leave Odo there, take the runabout and zip off, and you can, go be free and never have to worry about this. But he decides to save Odo and thus keep himself in the prospect of captivity.
Well, but also he sees the daughter seeing the behavior, because he almost doesn't save Odo. And then, so you still are left with like a little bit of a, if she weren't there.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. So they get in the runabout and they head back out and they keep being chased. And this is where Odo has the bright idea, right? So, there's these explosive gases all through this, and all he has to do is go in there, sneak into it, get the Miradorn to shoot at it, and blow themselves up. Boom, gas field in Star Trek 101. And
so am I to understand that once they're in the gas bubble, once they shoot, before the shooty shoot could even make it to the runabout, it's going to blow up their ship. Is that what I'm assuming? That's what I'm hearing?
No, I think what they did was they put the runabout right next to the gas, and the Miradorn went into it, and when they fired it blew up, but they were able to get out of it before the fireball hit, because the assumption was the Miradorn didn't know that the gas field was flammable, was going to blow up. I think that's what it is. Anyway, naturally, again, cool effects here with the backlit silhouettes of the ships. I think the Miradorn ship looks pretty badass. I like it, and what a great shot! Look how effective.
Yeah, it's great.
Fire is so hard to do, special effect wise, and I thought that looked really good. Naturally, the plan works. Boom, Miradorn. There we go. This is when Croden asks Odo to take care of his daughter. He says, just take care of my daughter. You can take me back and I'll go be executed on my planet. Then, out of the blue, the Vulcans show up and offer assistance. So Odo here is forced to make a choice. And he decides to give Croden and his daughter to the Vulcan ship to save them. And just say, hey, would you take these two back to Vulcan? Whatever. And then he says he'll tell Croden's people that they were killed in the battle in the asteroid.
Now, some might argue, Keith, might argue that this was not a chivalrous act on Odo's part, and he just did not want to have to raise a young girl.
I could have, well, I'm sure he could have found somebody more appropriate, although that was Croden's plan, to have Odo raise her.
And Odo was like, I don't know. And he's like, you are lonely. And Odo's like, I don't know that those are completely compatible thoughts, but okay.
Well, that happened. And then like Rick Berman came in like with a note from Paramount saying, we are over budget.
Yes.
No more series regulars. So I think that's probably what happened as well. So yeah, but it's a very interesting ethical decision for Odo. And out of Odo's character thus far, because Odo has been very by the book, by the law, by the right, and very black and white thinking in his terms of his morality. So it's an interesting choice for Odo and a development of his character to see him make this choice. And so Croden gives Odo the necklace. Then the girl recognizes Odo as a changeling. Which is very interesting. And Odo smiles for the first time on the series. And so they beam off, and Odo heads for
and he says
home.
Well, and he does a completely out loud monologue, but then which I found curious, but turns out it wasn't out loud to himself, it was to his cousin. He says, hopefully I'll see you soon, cousin.
Yes. And as he heads to home, but doesn't know where home is. And we continue the mystery of where is Odo. So there we go. That is the episode Vortex. And it is now time for everybody's favorite vocab quiz. Mike, shall we do it?
Let's do it.
And now it's time for Mike Indeglio's Star Trek Vocabulary Quiz. Okay, your first vocab quiz is, what is a Miradorn Raider?
Well, Keith, the Miradorn Raider is a slightly over-budget effect creature that is a twin with another guy, and they are a pair that are a species that have bulgy diaper pants, and Keith hates them because they would make him look chubby.
Affirmative.
Close enough. Okay, now this one's hard.
I hope
Mike.
someone is compiling a compendium of all of my definitions.
Mike's Encyclopedia of Star Trek. That would be amazing and very wrong. Okay. So this one's hard. I'm going to start. We need more music for it.
All right.
All right. So your vocab word is tomer.
Oh, it's funny, man. On the stream, I was trying to conjugate it into Spanish. Oh, I've forgotten.
Make a guess.
Tomer means to shift, as in to shape shift, as a changeling would do.
Okay.
Inaccurate. Data in error.
Tomer is the gas, in the gas pockets in the nebula, the explosive gas in the nebula. So just keep in mind, if you find yourself walking through some tomer, don't light a match. Okay. You know what You know what that means? It's time for everybody's favorite.
Move along, go!
Okay, folks.
Ooh.
Welcome to the AlamarEmmys, where we give some ratings and ask some more questions here about Deep Space Nine, Season 1, Episode 11, Vortex. Let us first ask, Mike, did you find any wormholes in the plot? Well timed.
Yeah, Keith, nothing that popped out to me. I had some questions about. I don't think it's a wormhole. I do have some questions about the key, the machinations of the key, how it worked, how they set the lock. I thought it was clever. I thought it was clever, but I found that there's a convenience factor to it. But I thought it tied up pretty well. I don't have any foreknowledge of how it all shakes out with Changeling and that stuff, so I can't retrofit any of complaints. So it seemed pretty clean to me. Why don't you tell me?
Yeah, well, I think I've mentioned most of it. Odo being knocked out, that part I wasn't sure about, but I liked your explanation. I felt like that did add some credibility to it. So I don't hate that as an explanation as to how Odo got knocked out. And if the neuron that fired in your head about him having stowed away on a Vulcan ship through the wormhole, if that turns out to be true, then that closes the wormhole I had of how did he get there and what was he trying to accomplish, right? So he stowed away, got off his planet, but how did he get from where he stored his daughter onto a Vulcan ship, onto a whatever? I have questions as to how we got to Deep Space Nine.
I mean, to kind of and then on top of that, and I understood why they did it in the teaser, but for someone who's been a fugitive for so long, and he admits to being a fugitive for so long, he seems very bad at it. Like, clearly the Raiders found him, but that's not the worst of it. Like, when he's in Quark's bar, Odo notices him right away. He's giving you shifty eyes. He's looking all about. He's completely non-inconspicuous. So, which also known as conspicuous. So he's just very bad at...
Suspicious?
Yeah, he's very bad at being a fugitive. For someone who does it so much.
Well, yeah, and it sort of makes sense if you look back on it, but when he goes in for the stick-up, if you watch him, he's like all jangly limbs and about it. So he's very nervous. So, and also, that's also my issue with Quark. I think that's another wormhole too, right? Is if Quark wanted to steal the Fabergé egg from the Miradorns, having a fake stick up with somebody you don't know, is that really the best way to do it? And risking people getting shot as opposed to just like steal it, hire a thief. It was an odd way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would argue that Quark is a man of opportunity when it presents itself, right? So maybe he had no sights on setting up a plan to do it, but then when this guy showed up and was like looking for an in, he's like, oh, maybe I can make this work. So maybe.
Yeah, I guess. It feels a little undercooked for a Quark scheme.
For sure.
So that would be it. That'd be what I have.
All right.
Let's talk about our best moments here in this episode. What was your favorite moment, Mike?
I think, and I'm a sucker. I watched The Notebook and I still cry. I think for me, from when they land on the asteroid or the Changeling asteroid through the end is my favorite bit, because I think this episode specifically really sticks the landing emotionally. Now, I talked about the performances from both Odo and James Corden.
Cliff DeYoung.
Yeah. Croton on Hudson.
Mike, did you know that you are 44.1% banana?
Yeah. Orange, you glad I didn't say banana. So I thought that so everything in the ending is really earned, the emotional beats, which I think is really powerful because it's really a treatise on trust here, and
Mm.
how as much as you want to trust someone and you want to believe what they're saying, you also don't want to be manipulated. And I think Odo portrays that really well. It's a really human experience, actually.
Mm.
And that loneliness that he's feeling and the opportunity to learn more about it and maybe discover that he's not alone. And then to have been sort of played, but also not played, and still make the decisions he makes. I think it all is emotional. The emotional weight is earned. And additionally, I garnered some pathos, more respect, and I am now more invested emotionally, not just interested in the journey of Odo. So I think that last little bit, that last act basically really did it all for me.
Well, and I think that this is where Deep Space Nine diverts a little bit from the patterns that we've seen in Star Trek thus far. Because Odo, I think at first glance, is in the Spock Data slot
Mm-hmm.
on the team because he's very gruff, he's very sort of straightforward and by the book and a little bit mysterious. But we learned in this that Odo is actually very emotional. And the defining characteristic of both Data and Spock is being unemotional. And even though he's very straight-laced, he's very by the book, he's very step, 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 he's very deeply emotional. And I think that's a layer that we're adding here that I really, really liked. And Renee's able to do. So it's not just he's like the gruff cop. He has this deep vulnerability as a character, and I think that makes it a vastly more interesting character. So yeah, I mean, I think yes, obviously, these deeper emotional beats for Odo are by far the coolest part of the episode. But just for the sake of not overlapping, even though the flying through and getting a ship to ignite the boom boom gases in the nebula is like a Star Trek trope we've seen 100 times. It looked great.
It did look great.
And you know, being able to borrow some effects from Wrath of Khan really paid off. You saw the money on the screen. It looked great. So that was my favorite part. So
Wait.
let us. Oh,
Keith, hit the rewind button. I want to talk about something else.
oh, okay.
You mentioned it before, and I'm going to mention it again. I think we need. I'm hoping that somewhere in season 1 here, we reestablish Quark's sort of place ethically, because we're entering a territory now where it could start to seem like he's getting a pass when he shouldn't, you know, because it's starting to get to like, oh, Odo, Ferengi's gonna crime, but
Right.
we've also established really tight security on the station. You've got yes, I know that we're in a nebulous place between Federation control, Bajoran control. But it still seems like Odo's pretty specific with his judicial arm, and we've had tribunals, we've had probable cause hearings, we've had lots of different judicial type things happening, but Odo seems to always get to kind of his way off of trouble. So
Quark does, yes.
Quark, excuse me. So yeah, I hope we get a firm. Yes, I get his place on the show, but
Yeah. There need to be consequences. Yeah. No, I agree with you on that wholeheartedly, but you know what brought just joy to my heart a little bit is how no, that was definitely not it.
Well.
But my buddy Mike Indeglio, who'd never seen much of Star Trek at all, just like tossed off, oh, you know, Federation and Bajoran control, just taught so easily. I'm so excited. Here I am. You're absorbing it. You are taking in the Star Trek info like your Odo goo. I'm delighted. I'm delighted. So, what do you say we give some episode ratings?
All right.
Mike, talk about this episode.
Well, let me tell you this, Keith. I was about to say that these stem bolts aren't going to seal themselves, but turns out by their very nature as self-sealing stem bolts, they could. But today
Yeah.
they don't have to. We're going to seal it for them. I liked this episode quite a bit. I liked it because despite the fact that upon retroactively watching, they set all the chess pieces in the beginning. And maybe that's a bit convenient, but that aside, I like it. They were still able to keep you. Nothing was on the nose. Even the things that seem to be on the nose, like, oh, this guy's clearly pulling Odo's leg to get what he wants, to get something, to get out. There's more to it. You know, it turns out that he does have somewhat altruistic goals, and he's trying to save his daughter, and there's no way you see that coming. And the key isn't just a tempting device for Odo. It actually turns out to have agency in the plot. So everything is very well constructed. And I enjoy that. I really like, even if the plot is a little paint by numbers at times, that's television, right? And as long as it's earned and they intertwine into sort of a cohesive work at the end, I enjoy it. It holds up to scrutiny much better than an episode like Move Along Home that we dissected.
For sure. Well, it's a low bar, but yes.
But I enjoy that. And then if you can pepper on top of that, and you talk about this all the time, if you can season in some emotional weight, and we get that from an excellent performance by Renee and Bergenois in this episode. And then on top of that, if you can pepper in some seedlings in long plot that will grow as far as the changeling everything, even better, man. What's not to like?
Yeah.
Plus some great special effects. I like when they make the actiony stuff be ship combat or space stuff, because that looks cool. We only got a little bit of fight sequence in the beginning, and it was, it was what it is.
Yeah.
It's never better. I imagine it's never getting better than that. So.
Oh, no. If you're hoping for some like blood sport, you are going to be sorely mistaken.
So I don't know what more you could really ask for here. I really enjoyed it. I don't think it reaches the heights of, I don't know. Do you have the ratings up? What's the best episode I've rated thus far?
I don't have it up. I was literally just thinking I need to start a spreadsheet.
I can't believe you haven't.
I know. You think I have so many spreadsheets. But I'm going to get to it. But I think we were somewhere in the mid to high 80s.
Yeah. So
top as we've gone.
I'm so pumped because I hear you chatter about, and I've read some chatter about how good things get after season 1. So, oh man, I'm really fired up. So I'm not gonna get out of control just yet, but I still think we got to be in the 82.43 self-sealing stem bolt type territory.
Yeah. No, I think that's all right. I think that's all fair. I think that this episode for me, the first half of the episode is kind of disposable for me. The first half of the episode feels like Star Trek filler, which obviously it's not, right? You need that in order to have the second half land. But for me, this episode is about the last 15 minutes, and it's about the moving the Odo's character and story forward. That I think it's an important episode from that standpoint. The rest of it, like, okay, yeah, I've got the guy fugitive and the blah blah blah, and the daughter and the blah blah blah. Like it's sort of Star Trek basic stuff. But this episode is elevated by two things. One, it's elevated by Renee's performance, and it's elevated by the character development and the sort of the longer plot arc importance, but also the character development importance for Odo. Which is very important. And if I'm going to say, like, you need to understand Odo, you need to watch 15 episodes. This is one of them.
Yeah.
This is one of the ones that help you understand Odo and his whole deal. And we, at this point, we don't know how much of what we've learned about the changelings and Odos, are they even the change? How much of that is true? How much of it is not true? We're only knowing about it in the context of a fable, right? But it's important. What's true here is important. What's not true here is important. We don't know which one is which, but it is really interesting to see how that germinates and moves forward. So I think you're right I think you're dead on in ratings here. So I'm going to give it 81 self-sealing stem bolts.
You know what this episode kind of gets me excited about? I wonder if, and it's early in the first seasons of a show to do something like this, but the writing and the sort of confidence in the portrayals and in the characters so far seems like it could handle what this episode probably should have been, which is like a bottle episode. I felt that we had to invite other cast members in for just kind of random stuff. Like we saw Ben just to sort of deal with some political stuff about I think we really could have just focused on, this could have been an Odo exclusive type episode. And I think they
I think they
have
I like that so much.
Yeah, I think they have the actors to do it, and they have the writing confidence to do it. I think they just felt maybe it was too early, and they were spending money on these other characters, so they had to do it.
Oh, yes, 100%. This is a two-hander. It's the two of them on the shuttle the whole time.
Yeah.
The whole time. And it's just the two of them. Like, I think we should go to the planet and see the daughter, but up until that point, it should be the two of them rehashing this stuff on the shuttle.
Yeah, and
I love that idea.
And the back and forth, because that scene with Odo feeling somewhat manipulated, but slowly acquiescing to it was the most sort of best back and forth.
Yeah,
so I think that's what I felt.
Should have picked it up on the way, bringing him back to the station. Love it. All right, well, if we decide to do our own rewrite of the entire series, that's how we would form this episode. So next week, the episode we will be discussing will be episode 12, Battle Lines, which is an episode that is not well rated, not well liked, but I actually am a secret defender of this episode.
Okay.
So I think that the execution isn't always terrific, but I really liked the idea and the concept. And there is a certain to be very famous guest actor on this episode, which should be enjoyable.
Okay.
So we will see you back here next week with Battle Lines. If you want to watch Mike watch Battle Lines, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/KM. We're gonna record an AMA soon. We're gonna record a walkthrough of a Trek game, and
we'll do an hour. We'll do an hour, Keith, and then you can decide whether you're interested to continue. But I just want to see how this will go.
That's definitely as far as I'm gonna go. But you want to know
there's
what
no
else
voice acting, so I think we're gonna also have to dust off our acting chops and lend voices.
Great. Yeah, great.
How's your Scotty coming along?
It's not good, Captain.
If you want to hear more of that, here it is.
Patreon.com/KM. And we're going to be recording soon our talk through of Star Trek The Wrath of Niner. You do not want
Are we doing
to
that today?
miss it. If I get the poster done.
Okay.
But probably not. Well, we'll see. We'll see. All right. Anyway, let's all go home. Let's move along home. Till then, this has been. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KM.